Hello, thrill seekers and party animals. Good morning. Okay, let's see. As always, I've been putting new stuff on my blog, hardcorezen.info, and new stuff on my podcast. I'll probably put a new thing on my blog after I put up this video, so maybe it'll be there by the time you watch this. I've been putting new old stuff, things that things that I wrote in the past for other reasons other than the blog, and either they weren't published or they weren't published on the blog, and now they're being published on the blog because people like the blog, and I haven't been writing too much for it lately. And the podcast, the last thing I put up there was 3 talks about what was it? Not Joshu's fox. God, now that I said Joshu's fox, Hyakujo's fox. Dang, Joshu's moo, Hyakujo's fox. Anyway, it's all there. So I got this interesting email that I just saw today. Actually, it came from a while ago, and now I'm just answering it. But I saw it today, and I thought because it's a question I get asked often, I would talk about it on this video channel. This guy practices Zazen and listens to my books and stuff, which is nice. That's great. And thank you. And he says, my issue comes from this. My local Zen center is their reliance on formality. I guess this issue is their reliance on formality, which I've found your work lacks while maintaining the integrity of the philosophy. I'm hoping that I could ask for instruction in the principles of Zen while allowing the ceremony to take a back seat to the actual process of studying the material. Which is one of many ways I've heard that question phrased. There's a lot of differences in how much formality is required or practiced at any given Zen place you might go to. I was in Europe this past 3 weeks. I just came back last week, in fact, exactly a week ago. And I saw a bit of that play out over there. One of the issues that's gone on in Europe, and people get kind of heated, and I don't want to get into a debate or anything about this, but is the Deshimaru lineage. The Taizen Deshimaru was a Zen teacher who came from Japan, settled in France, and unfortunately passed away before he had established any Dharma heirs. So, in order to kind of shore things up, a bunch of the Deshimaru lineage people went back to Japan, maybe they'd never been there before, studied with the Soto Shu, which is the big organization over there that's sort of like the Zen Vatican of the Soto organization. It's a long story, anyway. And they do a lot of formality and ritual and stuff. So these folks came back to Europe and established an extremely formal sort of Zen practice where they do all the rituals and all the ceremonies, and they know them by heart, and they like to dress in kuromo, which is black robes. So I don't know if it's required, but I think at their temples it's encouraged to wear a kuromo, which is this black robe, as I just said, when practicing Zazen. And I know I've been to some where they have like them hanging in a closet for newcomers to wear if they want to wear them. So at least they provide you with the kuromo to wear if you want. Just to keep the practice very, very formal. Other teachers are very loose. My first teacher, Tim, you can tell by the name I call him Tim. He must have had a Dharma name because he was with a teacher, but I never heard it. I always called him Tim. And he didn't wear robes, didn't do any of the formalities. Well, let me rephrase that. He didn't do many of the formalities. The point is that I've never encountered a Zen teacher who had no sort of formality. All of them had at least a certain amount of ritual. Tim was probably the least amount of ritual I've ever encountered. He would ring bells to do Zazen. I did see him do the Heart Sutra once, but he was kind of doing it as a request for people. He would talk, but his practice was very informal. But he did the lighting of incense, and he did the bowing, he did that. Nishijima Roshi was more formal than that, but he also rejected strict formality because he felt that Japanese Zen had become kind of a prisoner of strict formality, and that there were a lot of Zen teachers out there who knew a lot about formalities and rituals and ceremonies and not much about philosophy or the real reasons behind the ceremonies, and they were just kind of doing them by rote. Now, Ziggy's barking. Don't know what he's barking at, but I checked it out before we started the video, and it was nothing. So don't worry, folks. Anyway, so I've also noticed that there's a similar curve, or I don't know what I want to say, a similar gradation, let's say, of Zen students for how much formality they are willing to accept, ranging from people who just love all the ceremonies and rituals and really get into them and go crazy with all that stuff, and they're real into it, like cosplay, they almost seem like they're into Zen for the cosplay of it all. And there are others who can't stand any ritual at all. And in my own practice, I've had to kind of modify how I do it. For example, there was one guy who used to come to our classes when we had them out in Culver City, so this was several years ago. And he'd been coming for a long time, and we do a very mild sort of ceremonial thing where, for example, when you get to your cushion, you're supposed to bow to your cushion, turn around to the other way, and bow to the room, and then sit on your cushion and rotate and get on the cushion that way. So you don't just plop yourself down on the cushion. You have a little ritual that's for it. That's one of the things Tim taught me that I kept from his teaching, and that every Zen place I've ever seen has it. Well, this guy had been coming for, I don't know, a year or so, a while. And one of our people noticed that there's another little part to the ritual, which I didn't mention, which I usually kind of save, which is if somebody comes up and next to you, sits on the cushion next to you, they bow to the cushion, right? Well, that bow is actually a bow to you. So if you're sitting there facing the wall and you notice somebody's bowing to the cushion next to you, you respond to that bow like this. Okay, simple thing, and I don't usually mention that one on the first or second or third or fourth day of somebody coming to Zazen, because it's a lot to take in, and there's all kinds of other stuff, so I kind of leave that one. So anyhow, this guy had been coming for about a year, and one of my friends who'd been with the group a long time noticed that he didn't do the bow when the person came next to him. So she said to him, "Hey, listen, there's another part of this ritual you might, want to get into, and that's if somebody bows behind you, they're bowing to you, so you bow back." The guy got pissed, like really angry, and I don't know if he stormed out of that session right there and then. I mean, in my telling of the story, it's like, nonsense cat, the cat gets killed in the story. I doubt the cat got killed in the story, but it got bigger over telling. So in my version of telling the story, I want him to get up in a huff and leave right away, which maybe he did, because my memory's not clear. But maybe he just stayed for the rest of that, and then. But I never saw him again after that day. Like, never again. God, so angry that anybody would ask him to do this one other part of the ritual. So, seeing stuff like that, not that particular thing, I started thinking maybe I need a little bit more formality in my teaching. Like, when I do this stuff, maybe I need to make it a little bit more formal. So I started introducing some more rituals, most of which I learned up at Tassajara, because Nishijima Roshi never did, for example, a morning Zazen service, which is where you get together and after the first Zazen of the morning of any morning, I was going to say the first morning, but any morning of the retreat, after the first Zazen, everybody does a bunch of bows and chants the Heart Sutra and does a bunch of more bows, chants another thing called Emeijuku Kanongyo, and then does another bunch of bows, and then leaves the room in this kind of ritualized fashion. I didn't do any of that stuff, but I decided to add it because I felt like, this group is too used to having no formalities, and maybe they need a bit. So I introduced a bit of that, and some people left. Some people never came back after I started doing that. And I didn't even do those morning ceremonies every week. We were meeting on Saturdays. We still meet on Saturdays. But I would do it once a month. And just the once a month formal ritual stuff was like freaked everybody out. Not freaked everybody out. Freaked out certain people, and they left. And I thought, interesting, they left. I don't really get worried when people leave, because people leave for all sorts of reasons, so I just let them leave. That's fine. I think to a certain degree, or maybe to more than a certain degree, maybe to a large degree, what kind of student you are determines what kind of teacher you'll encounter. So sometimes, and it's difficult to predict, but sometimes the student who loves ritual encounters the teacher who loves ritual, and it's a match made in heaven. Everybody's happy. And sometimes, like me, a student who doesn't like ritual encounters a teacher who doesn't like ritual. A match made in heaven. That's fine. But sometimes the student who doesn't like ritual encounters the teacher who likes ritual, and it's like, Now, that does not mean that the student has encountered the wrong teacher. It might mean that the student has encountered exactly the kind of teacher she or he really needs. It's difficult to say, but I think if I find resistance to some practice like that, I look at that as a sign that maybe that's something I got to work on. Maybe my resistance is a problem. I also have this worldview, tempered, influenced by Zen and stuff, that the outside world and me are not two distinct and different things. So if I encounter a certain kind of teacher or encounter anything in my life, maybe I'm encountering something that is part of myself, and that maybe this Brad beast needs some of that. And if some of that is something I don't like, maybe I need that thing that I don't like. I don't always, it's not a nice, neat formula where everything works out exactly the same every time, because sometimes you encounter something you don't like and you're going, yeah, there's something wrong with that, and you walk away. That's also acceptable. You might encounter it again, which might mean, maybe that was necessary if I keep encountering that same thing and I keep resisting that same thing the same way. Maybe there's something going on there. So I think that's important. So I don't think you should automatically reject a teacher who's too formal for you, or reject a teacher who's too informal for you. You should kind of look at, well, here's where I am and here's the teacher I got. I did a video about this, kind of accepting the guru that God has given you, or something like that. I heard somebody put it that way, and that's a weird way of putting it, but I think that what we encounter in life is to a large extent determined by what we need in life. So in general, I think that trying to separate the teachings from the ritual, sometimes you can't do that. And sometimes the teaching is going to come with the ritual, and sometimes it's not. In Nishijima Roshi's case, he saw a lot of empty ritual being practiced in Japanese Zen, and rejected it and tried to find something authentic. But if you are not clear on where the boundary is between, authentic Zen and just plain old ritual, then maybe doing some of the ritual is important, because the ritual kind of is made to embody the philosophy. So the ritual is not arbitrary. The ritual is meant to kind of force you into acting according to the philosophy and teachings of Buddhism in a bodily way. Now, this is not to say that it doesn't get abused. I hate double negatives. It does get abused. So this is to say that it does get... That isn't what I meant to say. Anyway, it gets abused sometimes, and sometimes things go too far with the ritual, and sometimes things go too far with informality. But I think when you're just beginning in this practice, it's difficult to make that determination, and I would caution people against deciding that they're right and that their teacher or whatever group they've encountered that they are going to for the teaching is wrong. could be that they're right and the teacher is wrong. That could be the case. But it could also be the case that this is just what you happen to need. So there's my answer. How much formality do you need? I don't know. You probably don't know either. I didn't know when I first encountered this practice, so I think sometimes it's better to err on the side of just going along with what is presented to you. Which is not to say that you should complacently go along with whatever is presented to you in life, obviously. But sometimes there are times when you should fight against things, and sometimes there are times when you don't need to fight against things. So there you go. There's an answer that is not an answer, which is Zen, right? The answer that is not an answer. Anyway, thank you for listening. If you want to contribute to my continued well-being and all that, you can go to the URL you're seeing on the screen, hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. And you can donate to me. That'll take you to my Patreon and PayPal links, which will tell you where to donate. I just got a spam email. Isn't that great? And a spam text. So that'll tell you how to donate. And then I can just pay this guy whatever you want. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so there's that. But as always, this is offered for free, and you don't have to pay for it. So just take it for free if you want to take it for free. But those of you who contribute keep me in galoshes and snowshoes. So I really appreciate that, and thank you very much for contributing. So we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. What you doing, Ziggy? You hoping somebody in there gives you a treat? You hoping somebody in there gives you a treat? Maybe they'll give you a treat. I don't think there's anybody in there. I don't see anybody in there. Alright, good luck waiting for your treat, Ziggs.